The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind, the Tathagata. This is the 7th day of this 7-day sesshin here at Mountain Gate in northern New Mexico in June 2023. All the teishos and talks earlier this week have pointed very thoroughly to how to practice and how to free yourself from ideas, thoughts, conditioning, and so on. There's not a lot more to say about that, really. What is most important is to take it up and work on it, to do it, because that is what will bring us freedom. We can listen and listen and listen and listen, but until we really take the bit in our mouth, we're still hanging back. Zen practice is dangerous. We come up against all the places where we're caught, and there's a reason why we have chosen earlier in our life not to feel those places. But at the end of our life, it's going to come right in front of our face. One of the things that is known about dying is that your life comes fully in front of you. You begin to see more clearly how you've been throughout your life. I remember when my grandmother went through that, and she was in a nursing home by that time. She was in her 90s, and she had started crying, and she was crying and crying and crying and crying and crying and crying, and the staff couldn't find out what she was crying about. And so they called my uncle, her son, who was nearby, and said, "Do you have any idea what she's crying about?" But they came over, my uncle and aunt, and they couldn't find out either. She cried for a day and a half, and then it was done. She had not only seen where she had behaved in ways that she was now truly concerned about, embarrassed by, regretting, and had made her peace with them. She had been so fully present with all of those memories, the clear memories, not the assumed memories. And 6 months later, she died in peace. When we get to the end of our life, these things will hit us in the face, and we will have no choice. So we can die, as the poem to the koan in the Mumonkan says, "How will it be when the light of your eyes is falling? Will you be like the crab with its 7 arms and 8 legs, struggling to get out of the boiling water?" There are many, many tales of people who are dying desperate not to feel it, desperate not to get there, desperate to hang on to the remnants of the life that they have, and yet it is inexorable. When the karma begins to dissolve, to be this person in this life, there is no choice. There's plenty of people and plenty of institutions that try to continue it. There is the group of people that are convinced that if they have their bodies frozen, they will at some point in the future be able to come back and continue living. Unfortunately, that is unlikely to happen. And moreover, in attaching to the body, and not letting the body go, people become ghosts, unable to move forward or backward. Not enough energy, not enough karma to continue in this life as we had it, and yet so attached to this life that there's no letting go and moving on. It's worth considering, because at that point we won't have any choice. All attachments will be taken away. Who we think we are will dissolve. So if we are able to let go that phenomenal attachment to a person that we think we are, which is not the real being that we are, if we are able to let that go before we die, then, as Shirobunan reported in a poem, if you die before you die, you won't die when you die. Because who we really are is never born and can never die. It is profound, tranquil transparency, luminous transparency, able to comprehend, able to experience, but not what we think it is. It can never be what we think it is, because as soon as we get into a thought, we've lost contact with it. So what is this original face before our parents were born? There are a number of koans that point to expressions of this. Every morning during sesshin, we chant a rinzai, the preface to the rinzai roku, the account of the Rinzai's life. And one of the things it talks about is he was planting pines in the area in the mountains before the temple that he was at, Obaku's temple. And when he was asked about that, he said it's a landmark for later generations. But he also then, Obaku said to him, or said to the monks in general, that when Rinzai wields the mattock, the others are nearly buried alive. What? How can you understand that? It actually is a koan in the Rinzai Roku. When Rinzai wields the mattock, the others are nearly buried alive. We can intellectually assume that that might mean something, but that's not what it means. There are other koans that point to the same thing. It helps us cross the river when the bridge is broken down. It helps us return to the village on a moonless night. Empty-handed, holding a hoe. How can you be empty-handed and hold a hoe? Walking, riding a buffalo. How can you do that? And then there are the 16 bodhisattvas who went into the bath, and as soon as they entered the water, they each had an awakening experience. How do you comprehend that? Yet, it is possible to understand profoundly and demonstrate these koans fully. But we have to have let go enough in order to do that. And as I said at the very beginning, all 6 days of the sesshin have given deep instruction in how to do that. The only thing that is left for each one of us is to do it. That means to be ready to walk in to whatever might come up. To become immersed, as my grandmother did, in the anguish of how she had behaved during her life. She was a decent person. I lived with her when I was a small child, and my father was overseas in the war. And I lived with her, my brother and I lived with her and my grandfather later when we returned from Canada. And my parents went off to Cleveland Heights to build a house and set up shop. My father had a job there, and they planted my brother and I with our grandparents for the time while they were simply living in an apartment waiting for the house to get built. It was never a negative experience. I don't know how it was when she was much younger and when my mother was my age. But when I knew her, she was quite nice and quite caring. She used to take me downtown in Youngstown and on occasion, and we would go into, I guess it was a dime store, I'm not sure what, and she had other errands to take care of, but she would stay there and help me, or stand by actually, and watch me look at the different options for miniature furniture. Already in those days, I had an inkling towards design, interior design, and so I had a box back at her house, and every once in a while she would go down with me and let me buy one, or I should say buy for me, another piece of furniture. There were other things too. When my brother and I had a roiling good time taking tomatoes off the vines in my grandfather's garden and heaving them into the street where they made a nice red splash. We weren't get yelled at, but there were still things in her life that she regretted. As far as I know, she had no spiritual practice. I mean, on rare occasions, basically all I remember is Easter. We went to church and I got new shoes, and they were the kind of shoes I wanted to have, unlike when I was home and got the kind of shoes I would have to have. So I never knew anything about that. She never spoke of it, although she did move me in directions that she understood that were more spiritual by, for example, buying me a Bible for my 10th birthday. But what did she see within ourselves? And each of us in the process of doing our Zazen will eventually see these things about ourselves more clearly. There are experiences that we chose to deny. There are experiences that we chose to reject, but they still live in our bodies and contribute to our self-image and drive our behavior and reactivity. There are other things as well that we've swept under the carpet. If we've had any traumatic experiences, and some of us have had many, those things as well, terrifying, frightening, anguish-producing, those also will begin to rise to the surface where we have a chance to work on them, a chance to free our bodies from the tenacity of those sensations, those feelings, those hidden emotions. This will come up during Zazen, and for good reason, because until we see where we're caught, we can't let anything free. Now, that said, there are times when you won't be aware of the specifics of where you're caught. You'll just have this sensation in your body, and you tune in and you feel it and you follow it as it morphs into other sensations and eventually dissolves. And there's a sense of release and relief, but you may not know what it is that relieved. And it doesn't matter. There are other times when it may be utterly clear to you, and you'll hold on to a rejection of that feeling, those feelings, those memories, and have to coax yourself into letting yourself feel in your body the sensations of those experiences, because that's the only way you can release them. They will often reveal to you how you have compensated for those experiences, because many times traumatic experiences cause us to compensate in ways that can be dysfunctional. We want to be the most beautiful, and I don't mean in looks or personality. I mean the most clear and kind people. People don't generally wish to be nasty and unpleasant and abusive. That comes out of not dealing with our stuff. But when we try to compensate for where we are caught, then we begin to act in dysfunctional ways, out of the belief, inherent belief, that we are not worthy, that nobody will like us, and so on and so forth. And one of the things that can happen, which is wonderfully freeing through the practice, is that we begin to come face to face with these core beliefs and have a chance to challenge them, have a chance to look at them with new eyes and understand them deeply and gradually become free of them. This is another thing that is a gift of our Zazen and will free us so that eventually when we do die, and we all will, we will not be caught by them, because we will have freed ourselves from them through the Zen practice. It truly is miraculous. It truly does free us. But it takes persistence, faith, and a willingness to walk right into whatever is there without fleeing, or at least if you do flee, then to come back and try again. Millions of people through centuries, through millennia, have used these incredible practices to truly free themselves and open to the immense, exquisite beingness that we really are. So if you have any questions, go back and listen to those earlier talks. The first 3 are already online through YouTube. Shannon's talk is next. It'll go up today. And then the others will follow day by day. And eventually as well, since we have a wonderful book group that is doing all the wonderful things necessary to help bring a book of these teishos and talks into being, eventually they will be published. The first one is well on its way. Contract has been signed, and we're looking at a September publication date. And of course, we'll let everyone know when that takes place. The publication will be a print on demand, and it will be possible to order multiple copies at a 50% discount and pass them around, or whatever you want to do with them. And it will also, on the next day after publication, be available on Amazon.com. But if you go directly to the publisher, that's when you'll get the 50% discount for bulk orders. There's not much more to say. Only I urge you to dive in deeply while you have a chance. Because as Roshi Keplo said to me many times over, and I didn't believe in the beginning, but I certainly do now, it will be life-saving. And whatever time you have left will continue to be deeper and more open and more free. But know that the price is to go in to, as we said several teishos ago, turn the light inward and trace the radiance down to its root. And of course, on the way, work with what comes up in that process. But work with it through the felt sense, through the extended out-breath, through the deep yearning to understand and to be free, the openness to possibility. This will take you there as long as you continue to really work on it. So I thank you for listening. There's going to be a lot of time left in this teisho. So we will have a time to stand up and stretch, and then we'll be back to sitting for about 25 more minutes. There is a saying that after an awakening experience that's deep enough, I should add, you know when the water you drink is hot or cold, because you're able to be so present with the experience that it seems miraculous, like everything else will in your life, once you have let go sufficiently to uncover that potential that lives within you in this very moment. So again, thank you for listening. Let's stop now and recite the 4 vows.